been quite a few years since I've been to Dallas. In the older days, my younger days, I used to go quite often, but then I ended up in India for 18 years, I think it was. And so time flies. But I'm really, really happy to be here with you today to be able to share generally. But I'd like to start, I'm going to start a little bit with some comments on the reading for this week. And then we'll leave some time for question and answers and conversation, perhaps. And I wanted to start off with just kind of following up with, I think today's reading is actually quite interesting, and I want to just add a couple points to that. And I mean, basically what's being said here is that does God hide the truth? And there's one line in that reading that Swamiji does. He says, God's hidden reality cannot be understood by the reasoning faculty. And India's Sankhya philosophy states frankly, Ishwar Ashitta, God is not provable. And sometimes even you read in the Bible too. There's this phrase in the Bible, no man can know God. And so the consequent, you think, oh gosh, it's a little bit discouraging. You can't prove God and you can't know God. That seems to be something of why bother? But really, it's a little bit more subtle than that. No man can know God, but that does not mean the same thing as God cannot be known. It just God cannot be known by the consciousness of human consciousness. We have to enter into a state of divine consciousness. And it's been testified throughout the ages, centuries, long as we have recorded history, that the great souls, the great ones throughout history have testified that they have perceived God. God is perceivable. And I wanted to begin by just sort of along the theme of what we're chatting about here to start with. I would play it here on my harmonium, but sometimes it doesn't go so well. And so I'm just going to read this one chant and I'll go through it one time just to give you an idea because it conveys the thought or what I'm trying to convey and what's perhaps even what Swami's trying to convey. And it's a chant by a great poet saint of Bengal from the 18th century, and his name was Sri Ram Prasad. And he wrote hundreds of songs, hundreds and hundreds of songs, and his songs are still sung today in Bengal. Then and they're quite popular devotional songs. And he was a devotee of the Divine Mother, devotee of Kali, and wrote songs to her. And one of them really expresses what we're speaking about today. And he says, and I'll recite this. He says, will that day come to me, Ma? Will that day, oh, come to me, Ma? When, saying, Mother dear, my eyes will flow tears, heart's lotus will blossom forth, darkness will steal away, heart's lotus will blossom forth, darkness will steal away. Steal away, steal away, steal away, Ma, steal away. Steal away, steal away, steal away, Ma, steal away. 1,000 Vedas do declare divine mothers everywhere. 1,000 Vedas do declare divine mothers everywhere. Sri Ram Prasad says, my mother everywhere stays. Sri Ram Prasad says, my mother everywhere stays. Blind eyes see the Ma hiding everywhere. Blind eyes see them all, hiding everywhere. And I think that last line basically answers, you might say, the question, does God hide the truth? Well, yes, he does hide the truth if your eyes are closed, but is it really God that's hiding the truth? You could sort of say, no, but we close our eyes, and yes, no man, no human being in ego consciousness can see God or know God, but remember, God can be experienced. And that, of course, is, you might say, the short answer. Does God hide the truth? No, no. And I often think of it as kind of, you've probably seen these picture puzzles where they say, you look at this illustration, this drawing, and you see in the drawing a face or some scene, and it says, and it's the face of there's a famous one, the face of a woman, an elderly woman in the picture that you see online or in the picture. And it says, can you see the young woman? Can you see both? Can you see the old woman and can you see the young woman? And you look and you look and you look and you just can't see this other face. But then all of a sudden, maybe you come back to it fresh and you see the young woman instead of the old woman. Now maybe you can't see the old woman, but you can see, but then finally with a little practice, you can go from one to the other. You can see both. And it's kind of like that is you're looking at this world, we're looking at this world, and we see this world of in our intellect, our reason, and we see this, but we don't see that divine reality. And I know this has always been my challenge on my spiritual journey. The challenge has always been that I tend to go by reason and the intellect. And that is, as the years have passed by, I've tried to balance that with the heart as well. But I came to these teachings. I came to Yogananda's autobiography and these teachings. Religion in general. I came to it with my intellect, and it didn't particularly make sense to my reason. And I think this reasoning faculty is the approach to life through the reason. I think that's generally the common approach in America. We're a very reasonable country, and it's got to make sense. And, I mean, and that makes sense, even to say it that way. Plus, and but unfortunately, because we tend to approach life, perhaps I tend to approach life through reason. And also, coupled with that, we tend to be doubters as well. It's like Thomas, doubting Thomas, he would probably be the patron apostle, that how do we doubt? And so now there's something making noise in the background. I don't know if it's my side or your side, but
Oh.
in one or
Are
the
you
other.
getting feedback? Is that what you're getting? Is feedback?
No, it's like a rustling sound. A rustling sound's coming. But anyway, I don't think it's on my side, but if you notice something, what it might be, some uh, you might attend to it. But I'll go on. I just mentioned it. But so you could sort of say, I've always tended to be something like a doubting Thomas. And because in my thought, well, belief and faith are wonderful, but I'm the type of person that wants proof. And so that, and prove it to me. So my mind wants to be satisfied. And I think that's the natural challenge of most people. Can I believe in something and can I have faith in something if there's no objective proof to satisfy my reason or logic? And that puts us in a quandary when we're talking about divine realities. We want that logical proof, but sometimes as you begin to develop, and this is what happened to me, as I began to develop, there's some things in life you just know to be true. Now, I'm honest enough with myself to know that I can probably be deluded, I can be fooled, but sometimes you just know. And so I began this especially as I began to come into the spiritual path, there are certain things I just knew to be so. And so I began to change my perspective, working on the assumption that, well, maybe this is true. I stopped, but primarily, I think the step is for the devotee, you know something to be true and you can't prove it, but at least you come to the point where you stop rejecting it and you accept it tentatively. And I think this is what happens when our intuition, we begin to meditate, we begin to look beneath the surface, our heart begins to open a little bit, and we begin to say, I'm going to stop this tendency of automatically rejecting something just because I can't prove it, I don't know, because that's a little bit of presumptuous, isn't it? I don't understand it, therefore it's not true. But unfortunately, that's somehow at times how we approach it. Rather, they says, I don't understand it, but I'm going to maybe, my intuition says that there's something to this, so I'm going to accept it, but it's tentative. And as time goes by, maybe I'll begin to understand it. And I think it's that ability to stop rejecting just because it doesn't fit with my likes and dislikes, and it applies in other parts of our life too. I don't like something, therefore it's no good. Well, you pretty much limit yourself to a pretty small spectrum. And so this is how I came to the autobiography, and I read that, and I kind of didn't believe in a lot of the things in there. It seemed way too far-fetched to me. But there was something about it that attracted me. I couldn't prove that. So I said, well, I'm going to accept this man seems like a very good man who's writing this, speaking about Master. I can accept him as a sincere person. And this very sincere person who I seem to feel attracted to is saying these things that are way beyond my understanding. I don't know if it's true or not true, but I'm going to put it on the shelf and I'll come back to it. I wanted it to be true, but lots of times when we want something to be true, we fool ourselves. And so I says, I'm not going to be like that. But I'm going to wait and see. But now, fortunately, and what I think would have eventually convinced me to pursue, he even affirmed that. He says, and when I later met Swami Kriyananda, he affirmed it for sure. He says, you don't have to accept these things as true unless you have some experience. And that's what is being offered through these teachings. Yogananda says you need to experience. And that is actually why Yogananda and his gurus, it's why they took form in this age, in this century more ago, is why they incarnated, was to introduce something into this age that we're now in for society at large. He says we have gone past the age of just mere belief. Most people, there's not enough in this modern age of science, more rational approach to life. He says people have gone beyond. They're not going to accept anymore. He says now, and it's not that belief and faith are still very important, but we need something more. And basically what they brought a method, a technique, a science. They've said religion too is not just belief and ritual and hope. It's also scientific. Uh-oh, did you hear that? If you hear that in the background, somebody's trying to call. What did I do? Call from Jaya and Cheyenne. I'm sorry. Call from Jaya and Cheyenne. Well, there, it stopped. You know who that is, because he was trying to call me earlier. You mentioned Jan and Shama coming there to Dallas next week, and that was probably him calling me because he's been trying to reach me for some reason. But coming back, they introduced experience, and that is what Yogananda offered, and our masters offered, something to help us be able to perceive God, not just to believe, but we have to perceive. And and how that applies is when we begin to meditate, something begins to happen. We have the reasoning capacity, we have the heart's love capacity, but we also have this tool known as intuition. And this intuition is what begins to grow in our consciousness. We begin to know things. We begin to reason it. There's intuition of the mind. There's intuition of the heart. And my reasoning intuition was battling, you could say. And this is the case for many of us. We have this intuition of the mind, but then the intuition of the heart. Our mind says, wait a minute, doesn't make sense. But our heart says it does. And I felt something to be true, though the language to convey that didn't necessarily agree with that, didn't make sense to me. And I think this is, you could say, this ability to go beyond our tendency to reject that which we don't understand, the tendency to reject that which we don't like, perhaps in terms of our day-to-day relationships, and just becomes small, is so very, very common. And the Bhagavad Gita illustrates this in right in the beginning of one of the chapters. And this is where Arjuna is about to teach, or Krishna is about to teach Arjuna, and he says, I give these teachings to you, Arjuna, who have overcome the carping spirit. You have overcome that spirit. That carping spirit is that tendency to say, yes, but. And you start to, that spirit that is rejecting, this tendency of people to go too much by reason, their little reasoning, and they begin to react against it. And this habit of mind of being overly skeptical is something that is really detrimental to our ability to awaken the heart, to awaken the heart's feelings. And it's because it's through the heart, feeling of the heart, that as we begin to awaken that, it opens up and it stops that emotional rejection of the mind and rejection of the feeling. And we have to remember it's the feelings of the heart that influence what the mind is going to say. There's a saying, in a truism, you could say, that the mind follows the heart. If our heart doesn't like something, if our heart doesn't feel something positive, we tend to find all the reasons why that's no good. But on the other hand, if our heart is open and there's positiveness, then we'll also begin to find reasons to justify that as well. But as we do that, we develop our intuitive ability and we begin to know directly. This tendency, you could say, I think it wasn't just me, it's sort of like the American mind of being overly skeptical, overly scrupulous, based not upon experience, just based upon our likes and dislikes. There was a story that Swami Kriyananda used to speak. He used to tell this story a lot. And it's interesting. He used to, in the early days, I never heard him say it too much in his latter years, but in the early years, he'd speak this truth. And often, I don't know if it was just me being self-conscious, but he seemed to always be looking at me when he was telling this story. And he was saying there was a story in England. In England, there was the Lord so-and-so, Lord so-and-so. They would be riding on a train, and Swami would always tell this in a very mimicked British accent, which I won't use, and I'm not good at that. And these two gentlemen were looking out on the hills, and as the train was going by, and there was sheep all along the hills. Over the hills, and one gentleman says, look, my lord, look at all those wonderful sheep out there. They've just recently been shorn of the wool. It must have been springtime. They've just taken the wool and shorn the sheep. And the other one, who was very skeptically minded, he says, well, on this side at least. In other words, maybe on the other side the sheep weren't shorn. Well, And Swami used to burst out laughing when he told us, he says, some people are like that. They're overly scrupulous in their thinking. But the problem with that is it puts the brakes on your ability to go deeper. It's like you're digging in your heels. You want proof of every little thing, and you can't accept something, accept on faith, you could say, but just not accepting on, you tentatively accept something to be true until you can actually verify it. And that's how it was with me when I read the autobiography of the yogi. I couldn't accept much of it in there. But then I said, well, I like this. I feel tuned to this. I'm going to put this on the shelf, and as time goes by, maybe I'll come to understand it a little bit more deeply. And that's exactly what's began to happen. You begin to say, oh, that's true. That's what, and it's not so much that you're learning something new. And this is wisdom in general comes to us this way. We don't necessarily learn only new facts, become accustomed and introduced to new ideas, but we begin to recognize truth. And haven't you ever had that? You've gone to a lecture, you've gone to something, and somebody says something, and you say, "Oh yeah, that's true." But it's not that he made logical sense. You recognized it as true. Ah, yeah, I recognize that. That's a truism. And then you sort of know it, you could say, on a deeper level. And I think this is how we begin to learn intuitively, and we overcome that. And you might say you go from not just what do I know, but also you begin to ask, what do I feel is true? And you begin to bring that feeling and the knowing in together. And I wanted to read just in terms of so we understand, this is the intuitive ability to be able to perceive life from an intuitive point of view, not to reject the logic as well, but logic then you might say helps the intuition and not just the feelings, but the feeling nature begins to come in tune with your pursuit of knowledge and pursuit of truth too. And this is what I have a quote here from Paramahansa Yogananda. He says, intuition is that directly perceiving faculty of the soul which at once knows the truth about anything. Isn't that so? You just say, yes, I know that's to be true. I can feel it. I know it. Unless you have the power of intuition, you cannot possibly know truth. It is the knowing power of the soul without the help of the senses or the mind. See, it transcends. Intuition can give you knowledge about things which your senses and understanding can never give. Intuition does not depend upon any outside data whatsoever. In the calm, neutralized intuitive mind, all events of the future appear vividly. Intuition tunes the mental radio so that it can intercept all vibrations of future happenings, which otherwise are deflected by diverse currents. Convert every experience into feeling by intuitive faith. And basically, you could say, we begin to awaken that feeling, that love aspect of the heart. And you could say that in the long run, we overcome our doubts to a large degree by that feeling aspect. The mind can't really overcome all doubts, but the feeling aspect, love is the answer. And you can satisfy 1,000 doubts mentally, but there'll always be one more. What about this? What about that? And Swami said an interesting thing about that when he came to his conclusion about Master. Because as I came to understand, he had those same reactions as I did. He said, he didn't understand it, and he had all these mental doubts, logical doubts, but he had this feeling that Master's my guru. And Swami said later, he says, he came to the conclusion about Master, it didn't matter if Master was a great soul or not a great soul, that he was an avatar, he was not an avatar, there's all of these definitions. He says it really didn't matter. He said he loved Master. As Swami said, I loved him anyway. It just didn't matter whether he was this or whether he was that. And I think this is how we come to a point, is we come to a point, all this, is this fact true? Is that fact true or not? Could be, could be, could be, but does it matter? This is my path. I feel this is my path for this lifetime. As long as I have control of this life, that this is my path, as my intuition tells me that. And I accept it, and if I have doubts, I accept it. I accept my doubts, but it doesn't matter on that deeper level. Maybe all this I've come to, what if all this I've come to accept is wrong? And I've heard people over the years counseling people, he says, well, what if Master's not my guru? What if I'm wrong? Well, I says, well, will you have been helped along the way? Yes, if you're helped along the way and you've made some wrong decision, it's not going to hurt you. You can deal with that. And then you go on. And then I would add, and it's the duty, you could say, the dharma of all great souls to help other people to find the truth for themselves. So whether you're right or wrong, it's going to help you. Does it help you? And that's what we look within ourselves, is what I'm doing benefiting me? Is it making me more calm? Is it making me more better off? And that's the real test of whether these teachings are worthwhile and these teachings are true for us. Does it help me? And don't let your doubts, I guess if I would sum up, don't let your doubts paralyze you. We can get paralyzed by, oh, is this true? Is that true? Maybe I'm doing the right thing. Maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. In daily life, things are like that. Move in a positive direction, whatever you're doing. If it's little things in life, the big things, try to feel that you're moving toward the light. You're moving in a positive direction. And you can't really always reason your way out of confusion. They just you have to act. And in the acting in a positive direction, you'll find that energy is in motion, and energy in motion is magnetic, and you begin to draw to yourself intuitive guidance. You can't always reason your way out of situations, but you can act, and your consciousness, as you become more magnetic, your consciousness begins to change. And you raise yourself to another level, and then you can see that other face in the picture. When you're on a certain level, life looks to be just like this, and you want to see it in a new way. Well, how do you do that? It's by raising your consciousness. And really the key to this, and if I could sum up here, the key to raising your consciousness, developing the intuition, is learning to be calm and in your center. That intuition is calm knowing. When you meditate, go into that center of calmness in the heart, calmness in the mind. Go into that center of calmness. The heart's feelings make them still, calm, not wavering. In that calmness, you'll find that your intuition begins to open up one step at a time. Take one step, then take another, pray for guidance, take another step, pray for guidance, take another step. And you'll find little by little, your consciousness will change and you'll begin to awaken, and your intuition will begin to know, I know this is true. It's not just I believe it. Faith is more than just belief. Faith is having that inner knowing of the truth. And that ultimately, nothing, you get to that point, which is the goal for all of us. You get to that point of centeredness where nothing can shake you. The world's trembling all around you, but you're steady and you're marching onward step by step to God. So God bless all of you this morning on Sunday. And I'd like to, I think in the second half here, I have spent a little bit more time. I'd like to open it up to discussion, and perhaps we can have some questions and answers. And I give you back to Supriya and Maitri. What do we do
And
next?
Shyam, while you're I'll get the mic. Can you just zoom in a little bit so that he can sort of have more of a feel for us? We do have a few people here today, and I just want to invite everybody here that I'll bring the mic out, and you can either ask a question. Everybody's welcome to ask him any question, even about what he talked about or anything else, and just come up to this mic, and then he'll be able to see you more clearly. Oh, let's see, I'll turn this on. And then anybody online is also welcome to ask a question. You can put it in the chat or just unmute yourself, and it's always really nice to, let me get my glasses on here, to see the faces online. I know we don't have too many, but if you could just open to wave and say hi, that's always really nice. But maybe not. Maybe people are shy or in their pajamas or whatever. But anyway, you covered so much, Jaya. That was beautiful. So we thank you for sharing with us. Does anybody have a question they want to ask Jaya right off bat or comment? Okay, come up to the mic. Mike, come up to the mic.
Nice to see you, Jaya. It's Mike Wolverton. The intuition is the fruit of calmness. Can you hear me?
I'm putting my ear close to my speaker, so yeah, but if you could speak louder, I wouldn't have to do that.
Intuition is the fruit of calmness, I think is one of the messages you provided. Okay.
Yes.
And now, in Living Wisely, Living Well, there's a few very interesting pages where, about men and about women. And one of the things that Swami brings up is that women relate to love and men relate to joy. And, but for myself, I've always just tried to give some equal attention to all 8 aspects of the divine. And it had occurred to me, based on my experience, that calmness, just like you concluded, that intuition is the fruit of calmness. So do you think it's important to rate one of the 8 aspects over the other? In other words, the thing is that by experiencing them all, including the ones we don't talk about much, that's just been a blessing. And sometimes 2 of them together is very interesting as well. So like you said, anyway, I'll let you respond. Thank you.
Well, calmness, there's the daily, you could say the daily human calmness, of everything's mellow and how we often think about it and, oh, I'm very calm today. But I think you have, if you think about it on the terms of the aspects of God, we have to take that a little bit more deeply, because calmness is really the stilling of the ocean. And you could say stilling of the waves of likes and dislikes, stilling the waves of restlessness of the mind, stilling the waves. All of these things are calmness. But of course, I think in the sense I would say calmness is the gateway to the other aspects of God, but I do think it does relate to the individual's proclivities, you might say. Some people are more this way, more that way. But if you think of joy, let's say the calmness versus joy, ultimately in the end, if we take that all the way to saying aspects of God, they're beyond aspects. Triguna rehitam, beyond the worlds, they're all the same. But in expression, you might say they have this variation. And I do think, in a sense, that calmness is so immediately. If you're a meditator, if you're a meditator, calmness is something you can immediately access, whereas joy. Now we're taught we should bring joy to our meditation, But sometimes joy is hard to summon up. Well, calmness is too, but you know, but calmness will lead to joy. You could say calmness leads to, more, one aspect leading to other. Now, in a pure philosophical sense, you're absolutely true. You can't make these distinctions. But I'm speaking in the world of practicality of day-to-day devotees usually. Now, you could bring in the thing of love as well. Love without calmness tends to be emotional. The mind without calmness tends to be erratic and up and down, and it cannot focus. So you could say calmness is a particular ingredient necessary for all of these aspects to be able to reach their fruition. Now, if you took calmness, let's take calmness in another way, is that we say, I said this little common phrase talking.
Wait,
So
time out.
Just a second. We lost your sound a
Oh,
little
yeah,
bit. Go
that's
ahead.
the voice I was referring to. Whatever that is.
Oh, huh. He's saying there's some,
Like a static.
We-
Okay, it's gone now. Okay, so let's say the mind follows the heart. Well, uh, where's the heart in now let's take that into our human element here. The heart tends to be here, obviously here, and then we speak the heart's feelings. And the mind, up here. And so if you just look at in terms of yoga science, philosophy, you have the heart chakra, and you have the spiritual eye, or that chakra, sixth chakra, Agya chakra. Now, when you have a feeling, the mind follows the heart. Okay. Now, we're often taught what we need to do when we meditate, when we have feelings, is to raise the feelings so that they don't become emotional only. If it's just the heart can become emotional, but we need to so we want to raise that up to the spiritual eye. Now, to get to the spiritual eye, we have to go up through the Vishuddha chakra, right? The fifth chakra. And what is the quality that's manifest in the Vishuddha chakra? Calmness. This is the center of calmness. So we raise the feelings up through the calmness of the Vishuddha chakra up to the spiritual eye, and then we bring them all into balance. And so it's the mediator. You could say calmness is the mediator between these points. So from a practical sense, I think when we meditate, if you bring to your meditation, try to become still. This is what we emphasize. People don't go deep in meditation, it's because they're not still. Now, stillness of body we begin there. Stillness of breath, ultimately that has a very important aspect. But stillness of the mind, and so we become calm, and the waves, it's like the ripples on the lake begin to neutralize, and then we begin to perceive and we begin to feel clearly beyond emotion. We begin to feel. Intuition comes when the waves become still. And now that's not to say that joy, if a person is naturally inclined to joy and it's manifest, well, obviously we're trying to seek joy. From joy I came to feel. And actually, Master even says, if you want to be in tune with God's will, which is we do, we want to be, he says, try to awaken joy in everything, in every action. Try to make manifest within your life that feeling of joy, that inner intuitive feeling of joy. And if you act in that joy, all of your actions are, you could say, fruits of that joy or motive infused with that joy. They made the very interesting and powerful statement that you be in tune with divine will, and everything is going to work out the way it should. if you work in that joy. And he even went on to say, I can't quote it exactly because from the autobiography, but he says, even in the details and even in the little things, it's gonna be right if you're in that God's joy. So you're right. So, but you might say, how do you get into that joy? You have to be calm. You have to have that calmness. So I think here we're quibbling a little bit though. And if you feel joy, go with that. If you feel divine love, like Ram Prasad, you go with that divine love, and calmness will be the fruit of that divine love. Joy will be and the calmness will be the fruit of that joy. Because if those are manifesting, you don't say, well, I'm not going to feel divine love right now because I'm going to put Divine Mother, you're going to have to wait. I don't think Ram Prasad would say that. So, so anyway, those are meanderings on the topic of hoping to give some insight into your question.
Those insights. Thank you. Nice to see you.
That was great, Jaya. And thank you for giving a wonderful summary of an ad for our upcoming Raja Yoga class because you talked about the chakras, which we go into depth there, and all the qualities of God. And so, yes, everybody that hasn't participated in Raja Yoga or wants a refresher,
Right.
it's coming up.
I may be speaking to the wrong audience.
No, you're not. No, and we know that we can't hear enough of this and the different perspectives too. I thought it was beautiful how you were sharing the story of Swami ultimately how he, this is my understanding, wiped out whatever remaining doubts he had, was just that he loved Master, and that he would just focus on that love of Master, then everything else melted away. And being a bhakti, that draw of love is one that always perks me up. So that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So.
Yeah, but Swami, they all say what we need to do is we need to live a life of balance. We have to balance the heart. We have to balance the mind. We have to bring it. Because we each have our tendencies and our natural tendencies, and if they're not in balance, the tendency there's a possibility we get unbalanced and then we go astray. So you have to keep it in balance. Try to keep it in balance.
Are you looking at me when you're saying that?
Just say yes, Jaya.
I won't say anything further about that.
Jai is a dear friend. He actually, for those that don't know, he married Mark and I, and he knows me quite well that I need a little more calmness and a more balance. So, thank you.
There are some
How about,
people that just know they just got to beat their head against the wall to learn their lesson.
okay. Yep, you got my number there. Anybody else? We've got, a few folks here, and Jaya would love to entertain any of your questions.
And what about in the chat box?
Oh, there's one in the chat box?
Maybe I should bring it up if I can. Okay.
Yeah, read it out loud because we can't see it.
Okay. How do I deal with impatience on this path? I feel like I want to know God now, as soon as possible. Well, I think you let that impatience motivate you in the right way. I mean, honestly, if a person is truly impatient in this regard, that is a blessing. That is a blessing, because think about the opposite. If a person doesn't, maybe tomorrow, next year, next lifetime. Yeah, there's plenty of time. What's that story Master would talk about? One fellow would say, there's the one man would say to him, there's plenty of time. You have plenty of time in this life. God is for wait, do this or that first and wait until you're older, then you know God. then you can, and then Master said, yes, no, seek God right now. There's no guarantee for tomorrow. And so consequently, I think that impatience propels us. And now, every saint, if you were to read their autobiography, they're saying, they say that impatience is difficult. It tears the heart. The heart is so impatient for it, but it propels them. But it's not easy because your love and your desire for God and your wanting God, the fact that you more and more become aware that you don't have that. It's that desire for fulfillment, desire for truth, and that's manifest in some way. People, it becomes agonizing, and so that's the downside. So a person might say, "Well, I don't want to be agonizing over this. I'm going to not pay attention." But you find you come to a point where that nothing else really matters anymore. It doesn't. There's nothing else that can compare with the sweetness that you're seeking in the divine sense. So consequently, it's bittersweet to have that impatience. And I think the fact that whoever wrote that, Venetia, there's a certain bittersweetness to that. And because, oh my God, and look at every saint, bhakti saint that has wrote their songs. They're called, "Come to me. Will that day, oh come to me, God, Lord, will that day, or door open wide I keep for thee, wilt thou come, wilt thou come." Every devotional song has that longing of the soul, which is a manifestation, of course, of your question. And so what do we do? If you have a vision of something, beautiful vision, and then it goes away, you go, oh my God, I want that, and you want it, you want it, you want it again and again. And your heart is propelled that way. And I think this is what the spiritual life is like, that we're given little tastes of, in whatever fashion, you're given a little bit of joy. Oh, he says, oh my gosh. That was, Swami tells the story of when he was a disciple at Mount Washington when Yogananda was there, and he had a wonderful meditation. He's had some inner experience. He had, whatever it was. He didn't really quite explain. He says he had this wonderful inner experience, and he went to Yogananda. He says, "Oh, Master, I had this," and he was explaining it, and he was so happy to have this experience and moved by it. And Master sort of just looked at him a little bit disdainfully. He says, "Oh, that's nothing." Now, Swami, on the one hand, he was a little bit disappointed to hear that. Oh my God, he was sort of let down a little bit. But on the other hand, he said, "Oh my God, if that's nothing, what is the Master expressing? What is he experiencing?" And it made him even more eager, to pursue it even further. And so it's a natural question, and I think it's a good question. And I think it's a question that every devotee encounters. And the answer is impatience. To be impatient for God is a good quality. And so, it's God's, we want that. And it motivates us. So we have to fulfill it and do our best. So, okay, lots of spiritual teasers, and the yearning of knowing God can be agonizing. Thank you for asking. And yeah, it's true. I mean, it is true. That's been our experience. So I think all of us at some point, we get to that point. We want to, and you read the autobiographies of every saint. They've gone through that. So any other questions, further questions?
Chant, which many of us really love, says patient endurance of
Yeah.
everything brings us to victory, meaning we will find God, and we're assured of that. And
Yeah. Yeah, we can't be impatient to say, well, heck with this, you know.
exactly.
That would hardly be it. And those other patient endurance.
Endurance. Wait, that sounds all.
No, do you ever run into that endurance? I gotta keep going. I gotta endure. I gotta endure. There is that aspect of, and even that's what is, didn't Yanamata somewhere in her book God Alone say, how much can you endure? The spiritual path is learning how much you can endure. Now, it's not only this sort of enduring this, but in the sense we're tested. You know, it's that fruit of our desires for God is withheld for us. How much can we endure? And other things are substituted. You got to deal with this, you got to deal with that. And I do think one of the things we must learn, in my experience at least, is we have to learn patience. Patience, not to be ruffled, thrown off center, you know, little things bother you. If you're one of those persons where you're bothered by little things, oh, and that's we need to use some forbearance to be able to be not thrown off. But it's more than just enduring. This is the thing that's when you use that word, can we get to the point where we can joyfully endure? So I ask that myself. Sometimes some test comes and I say, well, endure. I'm going to endure. I'm going to, hang in there. But can I hang in there joyfully? And that's our next test, you could say, when we're faced with these things. Is there still joy somewhere in all of this, lurking under the surface of this test? And I think as a devotee, I think that's our duty to look for that joy in the midst of life's troubles and trials. And that, I think, that's probably a mark of we're really making progress. Of even in the most outwardly difficult times, we can at least there's a little flame there, and we have to just puff on it, see if we can bring that into life. Now that's asking a lot, but God and gurus, they'll help us. And really, what's the choice? We can't just go run off and get angry and impatient. That doesn't lead to anything. We have to face what we have to face and try to do it joyfully. At least at least at least do our best. Anyway, but any others? Let's see. Okay.
Yeah, so for me, when I focus on energy and when I need energy and try to summon energy, a lot of times it transmutes into restlessness. Do you have any suggestions about how to control that?
Well, I think we're all restless, aren't we? Yeah. How do you control your restlessness? That's actually a very practical question, isn't it? You've got physical restlessness, and I think there's physical things you can do to address that restlessness, and all of the. I won't go there. You could figure those out. But I think the harder one is that emotional restlessness and the mental restlessness, which is more in line what we're speaking about today. But it does not to shortchange physical restlessness, because if you are physically restless, it's going to impact everything else. So we do have to attend to that. But it's that emotional and that mental restlessness that is keeping the waves in motion, and the ability to, I think, be able, and this is why we're taught to meditate, because the whole very process of meditating is the learning to withdraw from the thoughts, learning to withdraw from the mental likes and dislikes. But it's not just withdrawal, it's withdrawal with a goal in mind, with purposeful withdrawal, to non-attach from that, to put our attachment to what's real, what we really want, which is why it's encouraged, bhakti yoga, why devotional, is to say I'm not going to want to do that restless, but I'm going to one pointedly put my attention on where I want to go. My love for God, chanting. I'm going to focus and direct my energy one pointedly, and then you see you take one step ahead of the restlessness. You're controlling yourself through your concentration, through your effort, through your channeling your energy one pointedly, so there's no room for the others. Now, what causes restlessness? You're being distracted. You know, you're over you want this, but something is pulling you to the left or pulling you to the right, and that can be your lack of ability to focus on what you really want to do and where you want to go. And what a lot of things can pull us: emotional attachments, doubts, memories, subconscious tendencies. I had an interesting experience this last week, actually meditating. It was. And I thought it wasn't a good experience. It was a bad experience, but it was something that I says, this is actually in a minor way, something that happens to us all the time. I woke up and I got up and got ready and went to meditate. And as soon as I closed, and I had been dreaming when I woke up from sleep, I had been dreaming. Well, as soon as I started to meditate, my mind immediately moment I closed my eyes, I went into a subconscious dream, and I opened my eyes. I could not close my eyes without going into the subconscious. And I thought, now this is interesting, because I never, or maybe I've had that before and not known it, but I could see I couldn't. The subconscious was so strong that I had to keep my eyes open in order to stay conscious. I couldn't get beyond conscious. I couldn't go into a bliss state or a joyful state or a calm state. And I thought, this is interesting. And it lasted for about an hour. And because I kept trying, you see, and I was persistent. But as soon as I closed my eyes, and so consequently, it made me realize that there's all sorts of tendencies within us that are pulling us to keep us restless, and so consequently and then it went away, and it really it didn't come back, but it was so strong, and I thought, interesting, that's what's happening for whatever was going on. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it, but uh, it pulled me out of my calm state. You could say I was pulled out of my state into subconsciousness. And I thought, well, that was really powerful. And so there's lots of things that can distract us. And as long as we're distracted, that you could say is a definition of being restless. Something's pulling me away from my center. And we have to, of course, address these appropriately in different ways. And that's what the path of yoga is about. That's why we meditate. That's why we do Kriya. I couldn't even when I was that state, when that was happening, I couldn't even do my Kriyas. I closed my eyes and immediately I'd go into this dream state. And I thought, I don't know what to make of that. But it went away and it hasn't come back. But this is why we do these things, and to be able to get to that point of being still and enter into that still, and to allow these other things to rest. And it's two things are done. One is we get rid of that which is blocking us, and we aspire to those things that are going to help us transcend. So it's the positive and holding back the negative. That wasn't a very good answer, maybe, but anyway, do your best. Okay, wait a minute. Did I skip a question? Okay. As a devotee, should I expect spiritual protection from life's up and downs? Should you expect spiritual protection? So let me say it this way. Now, can we expect God's grace, Guru's grace? And I think, yes, we can. But remember, 25% our effort, 25% Guru's effort, 50% grace of God, and our 25% effort has to be, you might say, put in the pot first, and then, or at least make an effort to get up to at least 1%, then we 2%, 3%, get up there. And then we see, because we have to take a step toward God, toward Guru, and then God responds 10 steps to us. And so and the same thing when we meditate, we put a little bit of joy into our meditation, then joy begins to come to us. If we're passive and are simply waiting for protection, that's not healthy. We need to have more than that. Now, faith, of course, we have faith that God will be with me, faith that God will protect me, faith that divine help intervention will be there when I need it, faith, but we cannot, it's like there was a couple of women devotees in Encinitas, and they were disciples, and they were reckless drivers, very reckless. And one of the other monks came and mentioned, so-and-so are reckless drivers, and I tried to tell them that they needed to be more careful. And they said, oh, no, we're not worried. Master will protect us. And Master said, well, see if they drive their car off the cliff and see if I protect them. And the implication was, no, they're going to crash. So Master is not going to supersede somebody else's willful activities. Maybe, though, you never know. Maybe he would. He sees deeper, but you can't just he says that what they were doing was presumption, and that's not right. They have to work in tune with divine law. And then when we work in tune with Dharma, then the universe comes to support us, and we draw upon that. So we have free will. And so consequently, we can be free will to do wrong things and hope that Master is going to come and save us at the last moment. Well, maybe, but I would be cautious about that approach. Anything further? Another question? Or did we run? Oh, I see the timing. We've run out of time too.
See if anybody here in the audience, if there's one last question, otherwise we'll wrap it up. Is anybody? It's fine, we're completely enthralled here, so if anybody else have a question, or we feel complete? I guess we feel complete. All right. Well, we thank you again, Jayaji, for joining us, and it's always a joy to have you and to hear what you can share with us and to share with you. So we'd like to just close. We'll just do we'll Om, and then we'll close with our traditional Texas goodbye.
Okay.
So hang on. So let's Om him 3 times in our gratitude and our hearts for him sharing with us today. Namaste, y'all.
Oh, good now. Come on back.
Please do. All right, thank you. And give our love to Sadhana Devi as well.
I will.
Okay. God bless. Have a great day. Bye-bye.